Good morning, everyone. Okay, welcome you all to another new Thursday. We'll continue our book reading this morning, Advanced Selling Strategy by Brian Tracy. And as we know, we are in chapter 9, which says how to make powerful presentation. Yesterday, we looked at gap analysis, which simply describes a salesperson as a businessman or woman who tries to close the gap between a prospect, a client, a customer, and his or her needs. And in the book yesterday, it said that you have to be a detective, ask questions, know their pain points, know the gap that your product and services will be able to cover, or know the pain point, or know the dissatisfaction that your product and services will be able to satisfy. That is just a brief summary of gap analysis of where we read yesterday. Today on page 304 of our book reading Advanced Selling Strategy like Brian Tracy, we'll be looking at the future belongs to the askers. There's an adage that says, person when they ask questions, no they misroad. So today we'll just start from here. The future belongs to the askers. Questions are the keys to buying success. There is a close correlation between the skillful use of questions and success at every stage of buying process. Questions are important at the beginning in finding prospects, and they are important at the end in gaining a commitment to action. They are essential during the presentation for clearly identifying the customer's problem and clearly demonstrating how your product or service solve the problems in a cost-effective way. In a sales conversation, the person who asks questions has the control. The best salespeople are invariably those who confidently and deliberately control the sales process, leading rather than following. The quality of your questions and your ability to ask them in a logical sequence is what demonstrates to the prospect that you are a complete professional, knowing what you're doing every step of the way. Questions arrest attention. They reach out and grab the lapels of the prospect and jerk him towards you. For the length of time that it takes a prospect to ask a question, I'll take that again. For the length of time that it takes a prospect to answer a question, you have his total attention. It is not possible for someone to answer a well-formulated question and think of something else at the same time. The prospect is drawn more and more into the conversation as your questioning proceeds. If your questions are logical, orderly, and sequential, you can lead the prospect forward towards the inevitable conclusion that your product or service is exactly what he needs. Telling is not selling. Remember, the average person speaks at 125 to 150 words per minute, but the average person thinks at 500 to 600 words per minute. When you're talking, the prospect can both listen to you and think of several other things at the same time. The more you talk, the more time the prospect has to think of objections, criticism, doubt, fears, and all the difficulties and details of his personal life. But the instant you ask questions and wait quietly for the answer, the prospect's entire attention is focused on you. He cannot think of anything else while answering. It is easy for salespeople to talk about their product or service, repeating the things they have read in their brochure. That is why most salespeople spend most of the time doing it. But it takes considerable considerable foresight, planning, and imagination and discipline to organize your presentation around a series of well worded questions. The basic rule is that you should never say a thing if you can ask it. If you must answer a question or make a statement, remember that the average person's attention span is limited. He cannot hear more than 3 sentences in a row before he goes into mental overload. At that point, his eye will start a glaze over and he will be unable to absorb any more of what you're saying. To illustrate the limited absorbent capacity of the human mind to a seminar audience recently, I picked up a pitcher of water and started pouring it into a glass. As I spoke about the need to give the prospect a chance to think about what they were saying, I continued pouring until the glass filled up and the water began to spill all over the floor. I continued to talk and pour and spill water everywhere until everyone got the message. Prospects need time to absorb and consider your message. Telling is not selling. As we saw earlier, the biggest complaint of purchasing officers of major corporations is that salespeople talk too much, and what they like most is the salespeople who listen carefully to them. The salespeople they buy mostly from are those who ask good questions and listen. Good questions and listen intently to the answer. The salespeople they respect are those who are always seeking for ways to help them do their jobs better at purchasing managers and with the products and services the sales people are selling. One powerful principle in selling is that listening builds trust. When you ask questions, you get an opportunity to listen. And the more you listen, the more the prospect likes you and trusts you. The more the prospect likes and trusts you, the more open he is to listening to you and considering your product or services seriously. This is why the future belongs to those salespeople who are the very best at asking good questions and listening attentively to the answers. Ben Fieldman, the legendary insurance salesman from New York Life, was once written up in the Guinness Book of Records as the greatest salesman in the world. In his best years, he was selling more than $100 million worth of life insurance one-on-one to individuals by using what has come to be called the Fieldman's method. Fieldman said that his method was based on 2 specific activities. The first was his ability to ask the penetrating questions. This is the kind of well-worded and all-skillful delivered questions that immediately grab the attention and arouses the interest of even the most skeptical prospect. Once, when a prospect told him that he was not interested in life insurance, that he didn't need it, and that he was prosperous enough to do without it, Fieldman paused and then said, "May I ask you one question? Will your widow be able to dress as well as your wife?" This type of question will often stop the prospect cold. He would immediately say something like, "What do you mean?" Fieldman would then go on to explain that because of estate taxes and debt duties, according to experience and statistics, if something were to happen to the prospect, his wife would probably be out of money and dependent on the relative within 3 years. By this time, he would have the prospect complete attention. He would then ask further questions, looking for the gap or deficiency in the prospect's financial situation that the prospect was not even aware of. The second part of Benfield method was finding the idea using financial planning instruments to solve the problems uncovered and brought to the prospect's attention with the penetrating question. Many of the best salespeople in a variety of selling fields now use these two steps procedure regularly in their sales activities. Whenever a customer asks you a question, he or she is taking control of the sales conversation. Instead of replying, you should smile, relax, and ask a question in return. When you answer a question with a question, you're gently taking control of the sales conversation back into your own hands. Okay, so this is where we'll stop for our reading today. It says the future belongs to the askers. So like I said in the beginning, a popular Nigerian saying said, person wey dey ask question no dey miss road. So as a salesperson, if you ask your prospect or client a lot of questions in regard to their problems or their concerns about what they they want to solve, or that unsatisfaction they are feeling, you will get to know what kind of product or service to prescribe to them. You get to know if your product and services is going to qualify to solve whatever pain points or unsatisfaction they are facing at that time. Will you be able to satisfy their needs and wants at that particular period? It still likens a salesperson to that of a doctor. Before you prescribe a drug for your patients, you have to ask questions. How are you feeling? How is it doing you? Are you having headache? What kind of symptoms are you experiencing? Same thing goes for a salesperson. Always ask questions. Secondly, asking questions to your client or your customers or your prospects helps you to be in charge and helps you to take control of the conversation or the meeting you're having with this prospect or client. So it is important to ask questions so you know what to say, where to go, and you don't miss the whole point in the process of communication. So that is just a brief summary of our book reading for today. Thank you.